When millionaire in disguise Grayson buys a slice of Lucy Harper's cake at a small-town farmer's market, he doesn't expect to fall for the baker struggling to save her family farm. But secrets never stay buried in sweet water. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The alarm clock buzzed at 4:30 a.m., but Lucy Harper was already awake. She'd been lying in bed for the past 20 minutes, mentally going through her to-do list for the day. 6 different cakes to bake before the farmer's market opened at 10. Bills to sort through after she got home. And somehow she needed to find time to fix that leaky faucet in the bathroom. With a sigh, she swung her legs over the side of the bed and pushed her brown hair out of her face. At 34, Lucy felt much older some days, especially mornings like this when every muscle ached from the previous day's work. The old farmhouse creaked as she made her way downstairs to the kitchen. It had been in her family for 3 generations, and Lucy was determined to keep it that way, even if it meant waking up before dawn every day to bake cakes from her grandmother's recipes. She flipped on the lights in the kitchen, which was small but spotless. Bags of flour and sugar lined the counter alongside butter she'd set out to soften overnight. Lucy tied her apron around her waist and got to work. "Coconut cream first," she murmured to herself, reaching for her grandmother's handwritten recipe card. The edges were worn and stained from years of use. Then brown sugar pound cake, lemon buttermilk, caramel apple spice, chocolate fudge, and, finally, pecan praline. As she mixed and measured, Lucy glanced at the pile of bills she'd left on the kitchen table. The electric bill was due next week, and the property taxes were coming up soon. If she sold enough cake slices today, she might just make it. But it would be close, like always. One day at a time, she reminded herself, just like her grandmother used to say. By 9 o'clock, the kitchen smelled like heaven, and all 6 cakes were cooling on racks. Lucy carefully packed them into the plastic containers she used for transport, then loaded everything into her old blue pickup truck. The truck had belonged to her father and had seen better days, but it still ran, and that was what mattered. Lucy's younger brother Tommy emerged from his bedroom just as she was about to leave. "Morning, Luce," he said, yawning. At 25, Tommy worked nights at the local gas station while taking online college classes during the day. "Those cakes smell amazing. I saved you some scraps in the fridge," Lucy said with a smile. "Don't forget to check on Uncle Pete today, okay? His medicine should be delivered this afternoon." Tommy nodded, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "I've got it covered. Good luck at the market." The drive to Sweetwater Farmers Market took 15 minutes, winding through country roads flanked by tall oak trees. Lucy always enjoyed this part of her day. For a brief moment, she could pretend everything was fine, that the stack of past due notices wasn't growing, that the bank wasn't threatening to foreclose on their family farm. She parked her truck in her usual spot at the market and began unloading her cakes. The market was starting to come alive with vendors setting up their stalls of fresh produce, homemade jams, and handcrafted items. "Morning, Lucy," called Martha from the honey stand across the way. "Those cakes look delicious as always." Lucy smiled and waved. She arranged her cakes on the folding table she'd brought, placing small signs with the flavors and prices in front of each one. $5 a slice wasn't much, but it was what the local market would bear. By noon, she'd sold about half of what she'd brought. It was a decent day, but not great. Lucy was cutting a slice of lemon buttermilk cake for Mrs. Jenkins when she noticed him. A man she'd never seen before was standing a few feet away, looking somewhat out of place. He was tall, with dark hair, touched by silver at the temples, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt that looked brand new. What caught Lucy's attention was how he was watching everyone, curious but hesitant, like he wasn't quite sure what to do at a farmer's market. "Can I help you?" Lucy asked after Mrs. Jenkins walked away. The man seemed startled that she was speaking to him. "Oh, I'm just looking," he said, then glanced down at the cakes. "Everything smells incredible." Lucy gestured to her display. "Would you like to try a slice? The caramel apple spice is popular today." "Sure," he said, reaching for his wallet. "I'll take a slice of that." As Lucy cut him a generous piece, she noticed his hands. They didn't look like they'd done much manual labor, but there was something kind in the way he accepted the plate from her. "I'm Grayson," he said, after taking a bite. His eyes widened. "This is incredible." "Thank you," Lucy said, feeling a flush of pride. "It's my grandmother's recipe." Grayson took another bite, closing his eyes briefly. "I haven't tasted anything this good in years." "Did you make this?" Lucy nodded. "I bake all of these every morning before the market." "You're very talented," he said, and something about the way he looked at her, really looked at her, not just through her like most customers, made Lucy fidget with her apron. "I'm just following recipes," she said. Grayson finished his slice and surprised her by asking, "Can I get another one to go and maybe a slice of the chocolate fudge too?" By the end of the market day, Lucy had sold almost everything she'd brought, including an entire brown sugar pound cake, to a local cafe owner. As she was packing up her empty containers, she saw Grayson approaching again. "Need any help?" he asked. Lucy paused, not used to offers of assistance. "I've got it, but thanks." "I'm staying at one of the rental cabins by the lake," he said. "Just here for a few weeks. Needed some quiet time." Lucy nodded, understanding the appeal of Sweetwater. For city folks looking to escape, it's definitely quiet around here. "Will you be here next Saturday?" Grayson asked, and there was something in his voice that made Lucy look up. "I'm here every Saturday," she said, "and Wednesday afternoons too." He smiled, and Lucy couldn't help noticing how it softened his whole face. "Then I'll see you Wednesday." True to his word, Grayson showed up at the Wednesday market. This time he bought an entire coconut cream cake. "I can't possibly eat all this myself," he admitted with a sheepish grin. "Planning to share with friends?" Lucy asked, carefully boxing the cake. "Not exactly. I don't know anyone here," he confessed. "I guess I just wanted an excuse to talk to you again." Lucy's hands fumbled with the box. She wasn't used to this kind of attention, especially not from someone like him. "Oh," was all she managed to say. "Too forward?" Grayson asked, looking genuinely concerned. Lucy shook her head, finding her voice. "No, just unexpected." Over the next few Saturdays and Wednesdays, Grayson became a regular at Lucy's stand. He always bought cake, sometimes slices, sometimes whole cakes, and always stayed to talk. Lucy learned he worked in tech, but was taking a break. He didn't offer more details, and she didn't pry. Instead, they talked about simple things, her grandmother's recipes, the weather, the best fishing spots around Sweetwater Lake. Lucy found herself looking forward to his visits, planning what she would tell him about her day. One Saturday, as the market was closing, Grayson helped her load the empty containers into her truck. "Your truck sounds like it's struggling," he commented as she started the engine. Lucy sighed. "It needs work, but that's not in the budget right now." "I know a bit about engines," Grayson offered. "I could take a look if you want." Lucy hesitated. She wasn't used to accepting help, especially from someone she'd known for just a few weeks. But there was something trustworthy about Grayson, something genuine in his offer. "Maybe," she said finally. "Thanks." The following Wednesday, Grayson surprised her by asking for directions to her farm. "I found some extra baking supplies at the cabin," he explained. "Thought you might be able to use them, and I could look at that truck." Again, Lucy found herself hesitating, but then agreed. "It's the old Harper place on Willow Creek Road. You can't miss it. It's the white farmhouse with the red barn." When Grayson arrived that evening, Lucy was surprised to see him carrying not just a bag of flour and sugar, but also a toolbox. "You really don't have to do this," she said, as she led him around to where the truck was parked. "I want to," Grayson said, simply, and set to work checking the engine. While he worked on the truck, Lucy made coffee, and Tommy came out to help. To her surprise, Grayson and Tommy got along immediately, talking about fishing and local sports teams. "Your brother's a good kid," Grayson said later, as they sat on the porch steps, drinking coffee as the sun set. "He is," Lucy agreed. "He's been taking care of our uncle too. Pete has emphysema. He was a smoker for 40 years. Lives in the little guest house out back." Grayson nodded, looking out over the farm. The paint was peeling, the fence needed repairs, but the land was beautiful. "This place means a lot to you, doesn't it?" "It's everything," Lucy said softly. That's all I have left of my parents, my grandparents. I can't lose it." Grayson looked like he wanted to ask more, but instead he just said, "Your truck should run better now. It was just a loose connection and some old spark plugs. I replaced them." "How much do I owe you?" Lucy asked immediately. Grayson shook his head. "Nothing. Consider it payment for all the cake I've eaten." Over the next 2 weeks, Grayson became a regular visitor at the farm. He helped Tommy fix the front porch steps, fed the chickens while Lucy baked, and even spent an afternoon teaching Uncle Pete how to use the tablet Tommy had bought him for Christmas. Lucy found herself sharing more than she usually did, about her mother's illness and how it had drained their savings, about the loan she'd co-signed before her mother passed, about her fears of losing the farm to the bank. Grayson listened, really listened, in a way few people ever had. And slowly Lucy realized she was falling for him, this kind, mysterious man who had appeared in her life like something from a dream. But dreams, Lucy knew all too well, had a way of ending. It happened on a Thursday evening. Grayson had come by to help her deliver a cake to a birthday party in town. As they were loading it into his car, which Lucy had noticed was far nicer than most rental cars, his phone rang. "I need to take this," he said, stepping away. "It's about work." Lucy busied herself adjusting the cake box, but couldn't help overhearing his side of the conversation. "Yes, I know the investors are waiting. No, I'm not coming back yet, Dan. Look, just because I have millions in the bank doesn't mean I'm at your beck and call." Lucy froze, the words hitting her like a physical blow. Millions? Grayson was rich. All this time he'd watched her worry about electric bills and property, taxes, and he'd never said a word. When he returned, smiling as if nothing had happened, Lucy was already closing up the passenger door. "All set?" he asked. "You're rich," Lucy said flatly. It wasn't a question. Grayson's smile faded. "Lucy, I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been hiding who you really are? That you watched me struggle every day and said nothing?" The hurt in her voice was unmistakable. "It wasn't like that," Grayson protested. "I just wanted—" "What? To play farmer for a while? To see how the other half lives? No, I wanted you to see me, not my money. You have no idea what it's like. People always wanting something from me." Lucy stepped back, arms crossed. "You knew I was struggling," she whispered. "My family was struggling." "I never wanted you to think I was buying your time," he replied, his voice strained, "or that I was some rich guy swooping in to save you." "Then why didn't you just tell me the truth?" Grayson had no answer for that. Lucy turned and walked back to the house, leaving him standing next to his expensive car with an uneaten birthday cake inside. That night Lucy lay awake, tears streaming silently down her face. She'd let herself believe in something impossible, that someone like Grayson could truly care about someone like her. Now she knew better. He'd been slumming it, playing some game while she'd been opening her heart to him. The pain was sharper than she'd expected, cutting deeper than she'd thought possible after knowing him for such a short time. Tomorrow, she'd have to pick up the pieces and move on. The farm still needed saving, the bills still needed paying, and her heart, well, her heart would have to wait. Outside her window, a gentle rain began to fall, matching the tears on her pillow. In the distance, thunder rumbled, promising a storm to come. The next morning, Lucy woke with swollen eyes and a heaviness in her chest that made it hard to breathe. Still, the cakes wouldn't bake themselves. She dragged herself out of bed and went through her morning routine on autopilot, measuring flour and sugar with mechanical precision. Tommy found her in the kitchen, staring blankly at a bowl of batter. "You okay, Luce?" he asked, concerned by the dark circles under her eyes. "Fine," she said, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Tommy didn't look convinced. "I saw Grayson's car leaving last night. Did something happen?" Lucy's hand tightened around the wooden spoon. "He's not who we thought." "He was, Tommy. He's been lying to us, Geese. What do you mean?" "He's rich. Like millionaire rich." The words still felt strange in her mouth. "He's been pretending to be just some regular guy on vacation, watching us struggle, and never said a word." Tommy frowned. "Maybe he had his reasons." "Like what?" "Getting a good laugh at the country bumpkins trying to save their farm." Lucy shook her head, anger flaring to cover the hurt. People like him don't really care about people like us. Tommy looked like he wanted to argue, but thought better of it. Instead, he just squeezed her shoulder before heading out to check on Uncle Pete. The Saturday market felt empty without Grayson's visits, though Lucy told herself it was better this way. She sold her cakes with a forced smile, making small talk with customers while her mind drifted to memories she was trying to forget. Grayson's laugh as he fed the chickens, the gentle way he'd explained computer basics to Uncle Pete, how his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "Earth to Lucy," Martha called from across the way. "You've been staring at that same spot for 5 minutes." Lucy blinked. "Sorry, just thinking." "About that handsome fella who's been coming around?" Martha asked with a knowing smile. "Haven't seen him today." "He won't be coming anymore," Lucy said flatly, and Martha was wise enough not to press further. The following Wednesday, Lucy almost didn't go to the market. The thought of waiting all afternoon, hoping and dreading in equal measure that Grayson might appear, was too much to bear. But they needed the money, so she packed up her cakes and went. He didn't show up. Not that Wednesday, nor the Saturday. After. Life at the Harper farm returned to its previous rhythm. Wake up, bake, sell, worry about bills, repeat. But something had changed. The farmhouse, which had always been Lucy's safe haven, now felt empty in a way it never had before. One evening, as Lucy sat at the kitchen table sorting through bills, there was a knock at the door. Her heart leapt before she could stop it, but when she opened the door it was only the mail carrier with a certified letter. "Need your signature," he said, handing her an electronic pad to sign. The letter was from the bank. Lucy's hands trembled as she opened it, already knowing what it would say. The foreclosure notice had finally arrived. They had 30 days to pay the outstanding property taxes or lose the farm. Lucy sank into a chair, the letter clutched in her hand. She'd been expecting this, but the reality of it still felt like a punch to the stomach. How was she going to tell Tommy or Uncle Pete? The phone rang, startling her out of her despair. She answered without checking who it was. "Hello? Lucy? It's Dan from Sweetwater Cafe." Lucy straightened, trying to sound normal. "Hi, Dan. Is everything okay with the cakes I delivered yesterday?" "Everything's perfect. Actually, that's why I'm calling. I've had so many customers asking about your cakes that I want to place a standing order. 3 cakes twice a week. Can you handle that?" Lucy nearly dropped the phone. A standing order would mean steady income. Not enough to save the farm immediately, but it would help. "Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dan." "Don't thank me," Dan said. "Thank the customers. Your cakes are a hit." After hanging up, Lucy allowed herself a small moment of hope. It wasn't a solution, but it was something. She called Tommy to share the good news. "That's great, Luce," he said. "Oh, and I've got news too. I got a call from Mr. Wilson at the bank. Apparently someone made a payment toward our property taxes. He wouldn't say who, just that it was an anonymous donor." Lucy's blood ran cold. "How much of a payment?" "All of it, Luce. The property taxes are paid in full. There was only one person who would do that." Lucy's hands clenched into fists. It was him, Grayson. The next day, Lucy drove to the rental cabins by the lake. She'd never been to Grayson's cabin, but the manager pointed her to cabin 7 when she asked. Her knock was answered by a surprised Grayson, his hair tousled as if he'd been running his hands through it. "Lucy," he said, his voice a mixture of hope and wariness. "You paid our property taxes," she said without preamble. Grayson didn't deny it. "I was trying to help." "I don't want your money." Lucy's voice shook with emotion. "I don't want to be your charity case." "That's not what you are to me," Grayson protested. "Lucy, please, just come in and let me explain." Against her better judgment, Lucy stepped inside the cabin. It was simple but comfortable, with large windows overlooking the lake. On the dining table, she noticed stacks of papers and a laptop. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about my financial situation," Grayson began. "But when I came to Sweetwater, I was running away from exactly that, being defined by my money." "So you lied," Lucy said flatly. "I omitted," Grayson corrected. "I never made up a fake background or claimed to be broke. I just didn't mention the millions." Lucy shook her head. That's a pretty big thing to omit. I know. Grayson ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up even more. But Lucy, you have to understand. For the past 10 years, I've been surrounded by people who only see dollar signs when they look at me. Business partners, women I've dated, even so-called friends. They all want something. He moved to the window, looking out at the lake. Then, I came here and met you. You treated me like a normal person. You shared your stories, your farm, your family with me. Do you know how rare that is in my life? So you pretended to be someone you're not, Lucy said, but some of the anger had left her voice. No, Grayson turned to face her. For the first time in years, I got to be exactly who I am. Just Grayson, not Grayson Locke, tech millionaire. Just a guy who enjoys your company and thinks your cakes are the best thing he's ever tasted. Despite herself, Lucy felt her resolve weakening. You still should have told me. You're right, I should have. Grayson's voice was serious, but I was afraid. Afraid that once you knew, everything would change, that you'd look at me differently. Like, I'm looking at you now, Lucy asked quietly. Grayson's face fell. Yes, exactly like that. They stood in silence for a moment, the air heavy between them. I don't want your money, Lucy repeated finally, and I don't want your pity. It's not pity, Lucy, Grayson said, stepping closer. I care about you, about your family, about that farm that means so much to you. Is it so wrong that I wanted to help? I didn't ask for your help. Sometimes people need help even when they don't ask for it, Grayson countered. Would you have accepted if I'd offered? Lucy didn't answer because they both knew she wouldn't have. I'll pay you back, she said instead. Every penny. Grayson shook his head. I don't want your money either, Lucy. I want... He trailed off, looking frustrated. What do you want, Grayson? You, he said simply. I want to see you smile the way you did when you talked about your grandmother's recipes. I want to hear you laugh like you did when the chickens chased me across the yard. I want to sit on your porch and watch the sunset and feel like I belong somewhere for the first time in my life. The raw honesty in his voice made Lucy's chest ache. Part of her wanted to believe him, to throw caution to the wind and see where this unlikely connection might lead. But the practical part, the part that had kept her family afloat through years of hardship, held her back. I need time, she said finally. This is a lot to process. Grayson nodded, clearly disappointed but trying not to show it. I understand. Take all the time you need. As Lucy drove home, her emotions were a tangled mess. She was still hurt by Grayson's deception, still wary of his motives, but she couldn't deny the sincerity in his eyes when he'd said he wanted her, not as a charity case, but as herself. Back at the farm, Lucy found Tommy and Uncle Pete sitting on the porch, deep in conversation. They looked up as she approached. So? Tommy asked. Did you talk to him? Lucy nodded, sinking into a chair beside them. He admits he paid the taxes, says he was just trying to help. And you don't believe him? Uncle Pete asked, his voice raspy. From years of smoking. Lucy sighed. I don't know what to believe. He says he didn't tell me about his money because he was afraid I'd see him differently. And was he right? Uncle Pete pushed. The question caught Lucy off guard. What do you mean? Are you seeing him differently now that you know he's loaded? Lucy started to deny it, then stopped. Was she? Would she have opened up to Grayson so quickly if she'd known he was a millionaire from the start? Or would she have kept her distance, assuming they had nothing in common? Maybe, she admitted reluctantly, but that doesn't excuse him hiding it from me. No, it doesn't, Tommy agreed, but it might explain it. Lucy looked between her brother and uncle, surprised by their apparent sympathy for Grayson. Whose side are you two on anyway? Yours, honey, always yours, Uncle Pete said, patting her hand, but I've lived long enough to know that pride can be a dangerous thing. Sometimes it keeps us from accepting help we desperately need, and sometimes it keeps us from accepting love we deeply want. The word love made Lucy's heart skip a beat. Was that what this was? Could she possibly be falling in love with Grayson after such a short time? The next few days passed in a blur of baking and deliveries. The standing order from Sweetwater Cafe kept Lucy busy, and she was grateful for the distraction. She hadn't contacted Grayson again, but she thought about him constantly. On Saturday morning, as she was loading her truck for the market, a sleek black car pulled up in front of the farmhouse. A woman stepped out, dressed in an expensive-looking suit that seemed wildly out of place in rural Sweetwater. "Can I help you?" Lucy asked, wiping flour-covered hands on her apron. "I'm looking for Grayson Locke," the woman said, her eyes taking in the peeling paint of the farmhouse with obvious distaste. "I was told he's been spending time here." Lucy felt a twist of unease. "He's not here. I haven't seen him in days." The woman sighed, clearly annoyed. "If you do see him, tell him Vivian called. His investors are getting impatient and we have a company to run." She handed Lucy a business card. Vivian Reynolds, executive assistant. After the woman drove away, Lucy stared at the card in her hand. It was another reminder of how different Grayson's world was from hers. He ran companies, dealt with investors, had assistants in designer suits tracking him down. At the market that afternoon, Lucy was distracted, her thoughts constantly returning to Grayson and Vivian Reynolds. She was so lost in her own head that she almost didn't notice Dan from the cafe approaching her stand. "Lucy, I've got amazing news," he said, practically bouncing with excitement. "You know that food critic from the city who was in town last week? She tried your caramel apple spice cake and loved it so much that she mentioned it in her column." He thrust a newspaper at her. There, in the city's largest daily paper, was a glowing review of Sweetwater Cafe, with a special mention of the transcendent caramel apple spice cake, sourced from a local baker. "That's not all," Dan continued. "I've had 3 different restaurants call asking about your cakes. I hope you don't mind, but I gave them your number." Lucy was stunned. "No, I don't mind. Wow. You might need to think about expanding," Dan said with a grin. "Seems like Lucy Harper's cakes are about to be the next big thing." As Dan walked away, Lucy sat down heavily on her folding chair. Expansion? More business? It was what she'd always dreamed of, a way to save the farm through her baking, not through charity or handouts. But she couldn't help wondering if Grayson had something to do with this sudden interest in her cakes. Had he pulled strings, called in favors? The thought both irritated and touched her. That evening, as Lucy was cleaning up after the market, her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Hello, is this Lucy Harper?" a woman's voice asked when she answered. "Yes, it is. This is Patricia Chen from Taste of Home magazine. We're doing a feature on hidden culinary gems in small towns, and your name came up. Would you be interested in an interview?" Lucy's heart raced. Taste of Home was a major food magazine. This could be huge for her business. "Yes, I'd be interested." "Wonderful. We'd like to come out next week if that works for you." After hanging up, Lucy sat in her truck, trying to process everything that had happened. The standing order from the cafe, the mention in the newspaper, and now a magazine interview. It couldn't all be coincidence. When she got home, she found a large envelope in the mailbox with no return address. Inside was a letter and several brochures for small business loans, specifically for women entrepreneurs. The letter read, "Lucy, I know you don't want my money and I respect that, but I hope you'll accept my connections. The interest in your cakes is genuine. I only made a few calls to people who could appreciate your talent. The rest is all you. The enclosed information is from a non-profit that helps small business owners. They're legitimate, and they're not connected to me in any way. If your business is growing, they might be able to help with funding that comes with no strings attached. I meant what I said. I care about you, Lucy, more than I expected to, more than I thought possible after such a short time. But I'll respect your need for space and time. Just know that I'm here whenever you're ready to talk again." Yours, Grayson. Lucy read the letter twice, emotions warring inside her. Part of her was still angry that he'd interfered, but another part was deeply moved by his efforts to help her on her own terms. She looked up at the old farmhouse, thinking about her parents and grandparents who had worked this land, about Uncle Pete, who needed his medicine, about Tommy, who deserved a chance at a better future. Pride was one thing, but family was another. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to accept that help didn't always have to mean charity. Sometimes it could be a hand up, not a handout, and sometimes it could even be the beginning of something more. That night, as Lucy lay in bed, she made a decision. Tomorrow, she would call Grayson. She wasn't sure what she would say yet, but she knew it was time to stop running from whatever was growing between them, complicated and messy as it might be. Outside, the moon shone on the fields her family had tended for generations. For the first time in months, Lucy fell asleep without worrying about losing them. The next morning, Lucy woke with a sense of purpose. The confusion and hurt of the past week hadn't disappeared, but they had softened, making room for something new. Hope. She reached for her phone and dialed Grayson's number before she could lose her nerve. When he answered, his voice was cautious. "Lucy? I got your letter," she said, "and all the brochures." "Are you still mad?" Lucy sighed. "I'm less mad, but we need to talk, Grayson, really talk. No more secrets or half-truths. Name the time and place," he said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. They agreed to meet at the lake that afternoon. Lucy spent the morning baking, her mind rehearsing what she wanted to say. By the time she drove to the lakeside picnic area where they'd planned to meet, she had a caramel apple spice cake, his favorite, on the seat beside her. Grayson was already there, sitting at a wooden table overlooking the water. He stood when he saw her, and Lucy was struck again by how handsome he was, with his dark hair ruffled by the breeze and his eyes lighting up at the sight of her. "You brought cake," he said, as she set the box on the table. "Peace offering," Lucy replied with a small smile, "and a thank you for the business connections." They sat across from each other, the cake between them like a bridge. "I owe you an apology," Grayson began. "I should have been honest from the start about who I am and what I do." "Yes, you should have." Lucy looked directly at him. "So why don't you start now? Tell me who Grayson Locke really is." Grayson took a deep breath. "I'm the founder and CEO of LockNet Security. We develop cybersecurity software for businesses. I started the company 12 years ago in my garage, and now we have offices in 3 cities and over 200 employees." "And you're worth?" "About 30 million, Grayson said, watching her face carefully. "Give or take." Lucy let out a low whistle. It was one thing to know he was rich, another to hear the actual number. "That's a lot of cake slices." Grayson chuckled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "I came to Sweetwater because I was burning out. The company's growing so fast and everyone wants a piece of me. My time, my attention, my money. I just needed to remember what it felt like to be a normal person again." "I can understand that," Lucy said softly. "But relationships have to be built on trust, Grayson. How can I trust you when you hid such a huge part of your life from me?" "You're right." Grayson reached across the table, not quite touching her, hand but close. "I messed up. But Lucy, nothing else was a lie. How I feel about you, about your family, about this town, that's all real. More real than anything in my life has felt in years." Lucy wanted to believe him. Part of her already. What happens now? You go back to your big company and your millions, and I stay here baking cakes?" "It doesn't have to be like that," Grayson said, leaning forward. "I can work from anywhere. Technology makes that possible, and Sweetwater is only a 2-hour drive. From the city. You'd stay here or commute?" "If I had a reason to, yes." His eyes held hers. "Do I have a reason to stay, Lucy?" Before she could answer, Lucy's phone rang. It was Tommy. "Luce, you need to come home," he said, his voice tight with worry. "Uncle Pete's having trouble breathing. The ambulance is on its way." "I'll be right there," Lucy said, already standing. She turned to Grayson. "I have to go. It's Uncle Pete." "I'll drive you," Grayson said immediately, and Lucy was too worried to argue. They arrived at the farm just as the ambulance was pulling up. Uncle Pete was sitting on the porch, his breathing labored and his face pale. Tommy stood beside him, looking scared. "What happened?" Lucy asked, rushing to her uncle's side. "Don't know," Pete managed between wheezes. "Just can't catch my breath." The paramedics quickly loaded Uncle Pete into the ambulance. "He needs to go to the hospital right away," one of them told Lucy. "How can follow us there?" "Go with him," Grayson said. "I'll drive Tommy in my car." Lucy hesitated only a moment before nodding and climbing into the ambulance with her uncle. As they sped towards Sweetwater Memorial Hospital, she held Pete's hand, trying not to show her fear. At the hospital, Doctors diagnosed Uncle Pete with a severe pneumonia complication related to his emphysema. He'll need to stay for a few days, the doctor told Lucy, Tommy, and Grayson in the waiting room. We've started him on antibiotics and oxygen therapy. Will he be okay? Tommy asked, his voice small. If he responds well to treatment, yes, but with his history of emphysema, we need to be cautious. After the doctor left, Lucy sank into a chair, the events of the day catching up to her. I don't know how we're going to pay for this, she murmured. Our insurance is terrible. Grayson sat beside her. Lucy. She knew what he was going to offer. No, Grayson. You can't pay for this. Why not? He asked, frustration creeping into his voice. I have the money. Pete needs the care. Why is it so wrong for me to help? Because it's not your responsibility, Lucy insisted. We're not your family. Grayson's face softened. Maybe I want you to be. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Before Lucy could respond, a nurse called them to Pete's room. Uncle Pete looked small in the hospital bed, an oxygen mask over his face and IVs in his arms. But his eyes lit up when he saw them. There's my favorite niece and nephew, he said weakly when the nurse removed his mask briefly so he could speak. And Grayson, too. Good to see you, son. How are you feeling, Uncle Pete? Lucy asked, taking his hand. Like I've been kicked by a mule, Pete admitted, but they've got the good drugs here, so I can't complain too much. Despite everything, Lucy smiled. Pete's sense of humor was intact, which was a good sign. You all don't need to hang around here, Pete continued. Go home, get some rest. I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay, Lucy said, but Pete shook his head. No need for that. I'm just going to sleep anyway. He looked at Grayson. You make sure she gets some rest, you hear? Grayson nodded solemnly. Yes, sir. Outside Pete's room, Lucy, Tommy, and Grayson discussed what to do. I should stay, Lucy insisted. Pete's right, Tommy said. There's nothing we can do here tonight. Let's go home and we can come back first thing in the morning. Reluctantly, Lucy agreed. Grayson drove them back to the farm in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, Lucy invited him in for coffee. I need to feed the chickens and check on things, Tommy said. You two talk. Alone in the kitchen, Lucy moved, automatically, filling the coffee pot and setting out mugs. Grayson watched her from the doorway. You don't have to be so strong all the time, he said quietly. Lucy's hand stilled. Yes, I do. If I'm not, who will be? You could let someone help you. Let me help you. Lucy turned to face him. Why? Why? Do you care so much about what happens to us? Grayson crossed the kitchen until he stood in front of her. Because I'm falling in love with you, Lucy Harper. I think I started falling the moment I tasted your cake and saw the pride in your eyes when I told you how good it was. Lucy's heart hammered in her chest. Grayson, I know it's fast, he continued. I know it's complicated, but it's true. I've never met anyone like you. So dedicated, so selfless, so real. You make me want to be a better person. Lucy couldn't find the words to respond, but she didn't pull away when Grayson gently took her hands in his. I'm not asking you to say it back, he said. I just needed you to know, whatever happens with us, whatever you decide, that's the truth. Before Lucy could respond, Tommy burst into the kitchen. The hospital just called, he said, breathless. Uncle Pete's taken a turn for the worse. They want us to come back right away. The drive back to the hospital was tense, with Lucy staring silently out the window while Grayson pushed the speed limit. Tommy sat in the back seat, fidgeting nervously. The hospital, a doctor met them in the ICU waiting room. Mr. Harper has developed respiratory failure, she explained. We've had to put him on a ventilator to help him breathe. But he'll recover, right? Lucy asked, her voice tight with fear. The doctor's expression was grave. We're doing everything we can, but his condition is critical. His lungs were already severely damaged from years of smoking, and this infection has overwhelmed them. Can we see him? Tommy asked. Briefly, the doctor said. He's heavily sedated. Uncle Pete was barely recognizable, connected to machines. That breathed for him and monitored his vital signs. Lucy and Tommy stood on either side of his bed, each holding one of his hands. Grayson waited respectfully by the door. You have to fight, Uncle Pete, Lucy whispered, tears streaming down her face. We need you. After a few minutes, a nurse gently told them they needed to leave. In the hallway, Lucy finally broke down, sobbing against Grayson's chest as he held her tightly. Tommy stood nearby, his own eyes red with unshed tears. "What do we do now?" Tommy asked, sounding young and lost. "We wait," Grayson said firmly, "and we hope, and we don't leave him alone." For the next 3 days, Lucy and Tommy took turns sitting with Uncle Pete, talking to him even though he couldn't respond, telling him stories about the farm and begging him to get better. Grayson was there too, bringing them food, making sure they rested, handling calls from neighbors and friends. On the morning of the 4th day, the doctor pulled Lucy aside. "We need to discuss your uncle's treatment options," she said gently. "If his condition doesn't improve soon, we may need to consider—" "No," Lucy interrupted. "He's going to get better. He has to." But deep down, Lucy knew Uncle Pete's chances were slim. That night, after Tommy had gone to get some sleep at home, Lucy sat alone by Pete's bedside, holding his hand and trying not to think about life without him. Grayson found her there, gently placing a cup of coffee beside her. "You should rest," he said. Lucy shook her head. "I can't leave him." Grayson pulled up a chair next to hers. "Then I'll stay with you." They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the beeping of machines and the whoosh of the ventilator. "Uncle Pete was my rock after my parents died," Lucy said finally. "He moved into the guest house to help us, even though his health was already bad. He taught Tommy how to fish and me how to fix the tractor. I don't know what we'll do without him." "You'll keep going," Grayson said gently, "because that's who you are, Lucy. You're a fighter, and you won't be alone." Lucy looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the sincerity in his eyes. Whatever mistakes Grayson had made, whatever differences existed between them, she couldn't deny the strength and comfort his presence brought her. "I'm glad you're here," she admitted softly. Grayson squeezed her hand. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." The next morning, as Lucy dozed in the uncomfortable hospital chair, she was awakened by a change in the rhythm of beeping monitors. Alarmed, she looked at Uncle Pete, only to find his eyes open, looking at her. "Uncle Pete," she gasped, jumping to her feet. He couldn't speak with the breathing tube in, but he squeezed her hand weakly. Lucy ran to the door. "Nurse, doctor, he's awake." What followed was a flurry of activity as medical staff checked Pete's vitals and assessed his condition. By afternoon, they had removed the breathing tube, though he remained on oxygen. "It's not quite a miracle," the doctor told Lucy, Tommy, and Grayson, "but it's close. He's responding well to the antibiotics. His breathing is still compromised, but much improved." "So he's going to be okay?" Tommy asked hopefully. "He has a long recovery ahead and he'll need ongoing care. His lungs are permanently damaged from the emphysema, and this episode has weakened them further. But yes, I believe he'll recover enough to go home eventually." The relief Lucy felt was overwhelming. She hugged Tommy tightly, then turned to Grayson, who was beaming. "He's going to be okay," she said, as if saying it aloud would make it more real. Grayson pulled her into a hug. "He's tough, just like his niece." When they were allowed back in to see Pete, he was pale but alert. "You all look terrible," he croaked, which made them laugh through their tears. "You scared us, old man," Tommy said, his voice thick with emotion. "Sorry about that," Pete replied. "Didn't mean to cause a fuss." "You just focus on getting better," Lucy told him, squeezing his hand. "Everything else can wait." But everything else couldn't wait entirely. Over the next few days, as Pete began his recovery, Lucy still had to manage the farm, bake for her growing list of clients, and prepare for the magazine interview. Grayson was a constant presence, helping wherever he could without overstepping. One evening, as they sat on the porch after a long day, Lucy finally broached the subject they'd been avoiding since Pete's crisis. "Before Uncle Pete got sick, you said something," she began tentatively. "About wanting us to be your family." Grayson set down his coffee mug. "I meant it. We come with a lot of baggage," Lucy warned. "A struggling farm, medical bills, a stubborn streak a mile wide." Grayson smiled. "I come with baggage too. A demanding, company-nosy business associates, and according to you, a habit of keeping secrets." Lucy couldn't help but smile back. "Quite a pair, aren't we?" "I think we're a perfect match," Grayson said, suddenly serious. "Lucy, These past few weeks have shown me what really matters in life. It's not money or success or what other people think. It's this: real connections, honest work, loving people who love you back. Is that what we're doing? Loving each other? Lucy asked softly. I know I'm loving you, Grayson replied, reaching for her hand. I can't speak for you. Lucy took a deep breath. The words were there, waiting to be said, but they still felt scary. I think I might be falling in love with you too, she admitted, and that terrifies me. Why? Because people leave, Grayson. They get sick, or they find something better, or they just decide they've had enough of small-town life and cake flour. I'm not going anywhere, Grayson promised, unless you want me to. Lucy looked out at the fields stretching away from the farmhouse, golden in the evening light. For so long, this farm had been both her anchor and her prison, the place that connected her to her past, but limited her future. Now, for the first time, she could see a different possibility. I don't want you to go, she said finally, but I don't want to give up who I am either. This farm, my baking, taking care of my family, that's who I am. I would never ask you to change, Grayson said. I fell in love with Lucy Harper, the baker who gets up at dawn and worries about everyone but herself. The woman who makes the best caramel apple spice cake in the world and doesn't even know how special she is. Lucy felt tears pricking at her eyes. What about your company, your life in the city? We'll figure it out, Grayson said confidently. Together. As the sun set over the farm, Lucy allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have both, the life she'd always known and the love she'd never expected. The next morning, Lucy woke to the sound of her phone ringing. It was Patricia from Taste of Home magazine, confirming their interview for later that day. Actually, the editor said, we were hoping to expand the feature. Our publisher saw your story and thought it would make a wonderful cover piece. Small town. Baker making waves with traditional recipes. Would you be open to a photo shoot as well? Lucy nearly dropped the phone. On the cover? Are you serious? Absolutely. Your story is exactly what our readers love. Authentic food made with love and tradition. We'd like to photograph you at your farm, maybe in your kitchen baking if that's possible. After hanging up, Lucy sat on the edge of her bed, stunned. From a small stand at the farmer's market to the cover of a national magazine, it seemed impossible, yet it was happening. She hurried downstairs to share the news with Tommy, only to find him and Grayson already in the kitchen, drinking coffee. You'll never believe what just happened, she began, then stopped. Why are you both looking at me like that? Tommy grinned. We have news too. I got a call from the hospital. Uncle Pete's being discharged tomorrow. He's coming home. Lucy's hand flew to her mouth. Already? Is that safe? The doctor says he's stable enough as long as he has proper care at home, Grayson explained. And I've arranged for a home health nurse to come daily for the first few weeks. Lucy started to protest, but Grayson held up a hand. Before you argue, it's not charity. It's what people do when they care about each other. They help. Lucy looked between Grayson and her brother, feeling a tightness in her chest that wasn't entirely unpleasant. For so long she'd carried the weight of everything alone. Learning to share that burden, to accept help, was still new and uncomfortable. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to try something new. Okay, she said, surprising both of them. Thank you. Tommy's eyebrows shot up. Who are you and what have you done with my sister? Lucy laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. I'm still me, just evolving. Later that morning, as Lucy prepared for the magazine interview, she found herself looking forward to the future for the first time in years. Uncle Pete was coming home. Her baking business was growing beyond her wildest dreams. And Grayson was standing in her kitchen, flour on his expensive shirt, trying to learn how to make her grandmother's lemon buttermilk cake. He looked up and caught her watching him. What? He asked, a smudge of flour on his cheek. Nothing, Lucy said, smiling. Just thank you for everything. Grayson crossed the kitchen and kissed her softly. Thank you for giving me a second chance and for teaching me that the sweetest things in life aren't bought. They're baked with love and shared with the people who matter most. Outside, the sun shone on the old farmhouse, making it look not worn and tired but sturdy and enduring. A place where memories had been made and where new ones waited to be created. A place that, against all odds, still felt like home. The day of the magazine interview dawned bright and clear. Lucy was up at her usual early hour, baking samples for the photographer. The kitchen was filled with the warm scents of cinnamon, vanilla, and butter, smells that had always meant home to her. Grayson arrived just as she was pulling the last cake from the oven. "Nervous?" he asked, kissing her cheek. "Terrified," Lucy admitted, wiping flour from her hands. "I've never done anything like this before." "You'll be amazing," Grayson assured her. "Just be yourself. That's who they want to feature." The magazine crew arrived an hour later, a writer, a photographer, and a stylist who immediately fell in love with Lucy's rustic kitchen. "This is perfect, Patricia," the editor exclaimed. "So authentic. Would you mind if we photograph you actually baking? Maybe your signature caramel apple spice cake?" Lucy nodded, tying on a fresh apron. As the interview began, she found herself relaxing, sharing stories about her grandmother's recipes and how baking had been her anchor during difficult times. "And what about the future?" Patricia asked. "Any plans to expand your business beyond the farmer's market?" Lucy glanced at Grayson, who was watching from the doorway. "Actually, yes, I'm considering opening a small bakery in town. Something simple, just me and my cakes." It was the first time she'd said it aloud, though the idea had been taking shape in her mind for weeks. Grayson's smile told her he approved. The photo shoot moved outside, with Lucy posed in front of the old farmhouse and beside her pickup truck. The stylist wanted to remove some of the more weathered items from the shots, but Lucy insisted they stay. "The chipped paint and the rusty gate are part of the story," she explained. "This farm isn't perfect, but it's real." By the time the magazine crew left, promising to send advance copies before publication, Lucy was exhausted but exhilarated. She collapsed onto the porch swing beside Grayson. "That wasn't so bad," she admitted. "You were a natural," Grayson said. "I think America is going to fall in love with Lucy Harper and her cakes." Lucy leaned her head on his shoulder. "As long as you already have, that's all that matters." The next day was busy with preparations for Uncle Pete's homecoming. Tommy and Grayson cleaned the guest house from top to bottom, installing a hospital bed the doctor had recommended, and rearranging furniture to make it easier for Pete to move around with his walker. Lucy baked Pete's favorite pecan pie and prepared a week's worth of meals that could be easily reheated. The home health nurse Grayson had arranged came by to discuss Pete's care schedule and medication regimen. "He'll need breathing treatments twice a day," the nurse explained, "and someone should be with him most of the time, at least for the first a week or two." "I can stay with him during the day," Lucy said, "but I have the farmer's market on Wednesdays and Saturdays." "I can cover those days," Grayson offered. "I've already spoken to my assistant about working remotely for the foreseeable future." Lucy gave him a grateful look. They hadn't discussed how long Grayson was planning to stay in Sweetwater, but it seemed he wasn't in a hurry to leave. When they brought Uncle Pete home from the hospital the next morning, he was pale and thinner, but his eyes lit up at the sight of the farm. "Thought I might not see this old place again," he said gruffly, as Grayson helped him from the car into his wheelchair. "Can't get rid of you that easily," Tommy teased, though his eyes were suspiciously bright. Pete noticed the changes to the guest house immediately. The fresh paint, the new curtains, the medical equipment blended carefully into the decor. "You all went to a lot of trouble," he said, looking around. "Nothing but the best for our favorite uncle," Lucy said, helping him settle into his new bed. "Only uncle," Pete corrected with a wink. Then, more seriously, "Thank you, all of you." That evening, after Uncle Pete was settled and the nurse had shown them how to administer his treatments, Lucy, Tommy, and Grayson sat on the front porch, enjoying the quiet after the busy day. "I've been thinking," Grayson said, breaking the comfortable silence, "about what you said during the interview, about opening a bakery." Lucy nodded. "It's just an idea right now, a dream, really." "I think it's a great dream," Grayson said. "And I think I know the perfect location." Lucy raised an eyebrow. "Oh? The old Wilson place on Main Street. It's been empty since the hardware store closed last year. It's the right size, has good visibility, and there's even a small apartment upstairs that could be renovated." "Sounds perfect," Lucy agreed. Also sounds expensive. I've looked into it, Grayson admitted. The owner is willing to sell for a reasonable price. Lucy gave him a look. Define reasonable. Reasonable for a small business owner with a good business plan, Grayson clarified, which I happen to have drafted for you. I'd be happy to go over it whenever you're ready. Tommy laughed. Man, you don't waste time, do you? Life's too short, Grayson said simply. When you know what you want, why wait? The look he gave Lucy made it clear he wasn't just talking about the bakery. She felt her cheeks warm but didn't look away. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to stop waiting and start living. The next month passed in a whirlwind of activity. Uncle Pete grew stronger each day, though the doctor confirmed he would always need oxygen and would never regain his full lung capacity. Tommy took on more responsibility at the farm, proudly telling Lucy that she should focus on her baking. With Grayson's help, Lucy finalized a business plan for Lucy's home bakery and applied for a small business loan. The bank manager, who had known Lucy's family for years, approved it with surprising ease. Though Lucy suspected Grayson might have had something to do with the favorable terms, the magazine article came out, featuring Lucy's smiling face on the cover and a 6-page spread inside. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Orders poured in from across the county, then the state. The Sweetwater Cafe doubled their standing order, and 3 other restaurants requested weekly deliveries. I can't keep up, Lucy told Grayson, one evening as they sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by order forms. I'm already baking as much as I can in this kitchen. Then it's time to take the next step, Grayson said. The Wilson place is still available. We could have it renovated and ready within 2 months. We? Lucy asked, catching the pronoun. Grayson reached across the table for her hand. Yes, we. If you'll let me be part of this, part of your life. Lucy looked around her grandmother's kitchen, where she'd spent countless hours baking and dreaming. The thought of leaving it for a commercial space was both exciting and terrifying. I'm not sure I'm ready, she admitted. You are, Grayson assured her. You're the strongest, most capable person I know, Lucy Harper. You've been ready for years. You just needed a little push. The next day, Lucy drove into town to look at the Wilson place with fresh eyes. Standing on the sidewalk, she tried to picture it as a bakery, her bakery. Gleaming counters, display cases filled with her cakes, customers sitting at small tables enjoying a slice and a cup of coffee. It wasn't just a dream anymore. It could be real. She could be more than the woman, selling cake slices at the farmer's market. She could build something of her own, something that would secure the farm's future and honor her grandmother's legacy. When Grayson called to ask how it went, Lucy took a deep breath. Let's do it, she said. Let's buy the Wilson place. The full renovation process was both exciting and stressful. Lucy found herself torn between overseeing the work on the bakery and maintaining her current baking schedule. Grayson was a constant presence, handling contractors and permits while Lucy focused on recipes and equipment. One evening, as they were leaving the half-finished bakery, Grayson suggested they take a walk down Main Street. I need to show you something, he said, guiding her toward the town square. In the center of the square was a large oak tree strung with fairy lights. Beneath it, a small table had been set with a white tablecloth, candles, and a familiar-looking cake box. What's this? Lucy asked, surprised. Dinner, Grayson said simply. I thought we deserved a moment of peace amid all the chaos. He pulled out a chair for her, then opened the cake box to reveal a perfect caramel apple spice cake. Her recipe, but clearly baked by someone else. Tommy helped me, Grayson explained, seeing her questioning look. It took us 3 tries to get it right. Lucy was touched by the gesture. It's beautiful. They ate a simple meal of sandwiches and salad, followed by slices of the cake. It wasn't as good as Lucy's version, but the fact that Grayson and Tommy had made it together made it special in its own way. As they finished their cake, Grayson seemed to grow nervous, fidgeting with his napkin. Lucy, he began, his voice unusually serious. These past few months have been the happiest of my life. Coming to Sweetwater was supposed to be an escape, a temporary break from my real life. Instead, I found what I'd been looking for all along. He reached across the table and took her hand. You've shown me what really matters, Family, community, creating something meaningful with your own two hands. I don't want to go back to my old life. I want to build a new one, with you." Lucy's heart raced as Grayson stood and then, to her astonishment, knelt beside her chair. "I know it hasn't been that long," he continued, pulling a small box from his pocket. "And I know we come from different worlds, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond. "Ring? Lucy Harper, will you marry me?" Lucy stared at the ring, then at Grayson's hopeful face. 6 months ago, he had been a stranger buying a slice of cake at her market stand. Now he was the man who had helped her save her family farm, who had sat by her side during Uncle Pete's illness, who had believed in her dream of opening a bakery when she'd barely dared to believe in it herself. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, I'll marry you." Grayson's face broke into a radiant smile as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, catching the light from the fairy lights above. "I love you, Lucy," he said, standing, and pulling her into his arms. "I love you too," she replied, the words coming easier now than they ever had before. The next morning, Lucy woke before dawn, as always. But instead of heading straight to the kitchen to bake, she took a moment to look at the ring on her finger, still hardly believing it was real. Quietly, so as not to wake Grayson, who was sleeping in the guest room, Tommy had insisted on maintaining separate rooms until the wedding, Lucy made her way to the kitchen. Today was special, not because she was newly engaged, though that was certainly cause for celebration, but because it was the day the bakery's commercial oven was being delivered. As she mixed batter for the day's cakes, Lucy thought about how much had changed in such a short time. The farm was secure, Uncle Pete was recovering, and soon she would have her very own bakery. And Grayson would be her husband. The thought still felt surreal, but in the best possible way. Tommy found her there an hour later, humming as she worked. "Morning, sis. Or should I say morning, future Mrs. Locke?" Lucy laughed. "News travels fast." "Small town," Tommy reminded her with a grin. "Plus, Grayson called me last night after you said yes. He was pretty excited." "Are you okay with all this?" Lucy asked, suddenly serious. "Everything's happening so fast." Tommy leaned against the counter. "Are you kidding? I haven't seen you this happy in years, Luce, and Grayson's a good guy. Rich or not, he genuinely cares about you, about all of us." Lucy nodded, relieved. Tommy's approval meant everything to her. "Besides," Tommy continued, "this farm could use a tech millionaire in the family. Maybe now we can finally get decent Wi-Fi out here." Lucy threw a dish towel at him, laughing. Later that morning, Grayson joined them for breakfast, greeting Lucy with a kiss that made Tommy roll his eyes good-naturedly. "Big day today," Grayson said, helping himself to coffee. "The oven delivery, and we need to finalize the paint colors for the bakery. And I need to call Patricia from the magazine," Lucy added. "She'll want to know about the engagement. She mentioned doing a follow-up piece once the bakery opens. My fiancé, the celebrity baker," Grayson teased, the word fiancé clearly bringing him joy. Lucy shook her head, still not used to the idea. "Hardly a celebrity." "Not yet," Grayson corrected. "But you will be. Lucy's home bakery is going to put Sweetwater on the map." 2 months later, on a crisp fall morning, Lucy stood in front of her bakery on Main Street, hardly believing her eyes. The sign above the door, hand-painted in soft blue and cream, read "Lucy's Home Bakery," with the tagline, "Baked with love just like Grandma's." The interior was everything she'd dreamed of and more. Warm wood counters, glass display cases, small tables by the windows, and a state-of-the-art kitchen visible through a large pass-through window. The apartment upstairs had been renovated too, though Lucy wasn't ready to leave the farm just yet. "What do you think?" Grayson asked, standing beside her. "It's perfect," Lucy said, her voice thick with emotion. "I can't believe it's really happening." "Believe it," Grayson said, squeezing her hand. "You've earned this, Lucy, all of it." The grand opening was scheduled for the weekend. The magazine had sent a photographer to document the event, and it seemed like everyone in Sweetwater was planning to attend. Even Uncle Pete had insisted on being there, oxygen tank and all. The night before the opening, Lucy couldn't sleep. She slipped out of bed and drove to the bakery in the dark, letting herself in with her new keys. The empty space waiting for tomorrow's crowds felt like a blank canvas, full of possibilities and promise. Lucy moved to the kitchen and began to bake, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Because baking had always been her way, of processing emotions, of marking important moments. As she worked, she thought about her grandmother, who had taught her to bake in the old farmhouse kitchen, who had believed that love was the secret ingredient in any recipe, who had told her, "Someday, Lucy, people from all over will line up for a taste of your cakes." Grandma had been right after all. When dawn broke, Lucy had 6 perfect cakes cooling, on racks, including her signature caramel apple spice. She heard the front door open and turned to see Grayson, still in his pajamas and jacket, looking worried. "I woke up and you were gone," he said, relief washing over his face when he saw her. "I thought you might be here." "Pre-opening jitters," Lucy explained. "I needed to bake." Grayson looked at the cakes and smiled. "Looks like your customers are in for a treat." "I made these for us," Lucy said. "For our family. You, me, Tommy, Uncle Pete, to celebrate privately before we open to the public." Grayson's eyes softened. "You're an amazing woman, Lucy Harper. Soon to be Lucy Locke." "Lucy Harper Locke," she corrected with a smile. "I'm keeping both." "Even better," Grayson agreed, pulling her into his arms. "The best of both worlds." The grand opening exceeded all expectations. The line stretched down the block, with customers eager to taste the cakes they'd read about in the magazine. Uncle Pete sat in a place of honor by the window, holding court and telling anyone who would listen that he'd known Lucy was special from the day she was born. Tommy helped serve customers, charming elderly ladies and teenage girls alike, with his easy smile. And Grayson stayed by Lucy's side, restocking display cases and making sure she took breaks to eat and drink water. By closing time, every cake had been sold, and the reservation book for special orders was full for the next month. As Lucy locked the door behind the last customer, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. "Congratulations, Baker," Grayson said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Day 1 was a roaring success. Lucy leaned back against him, exhausted, but happy. "We did it." "You did it," Grayson corrected. "I just helped a little." Lucy turned in his arms to face him. "We're a team now, remember? What's mine is yours. What's yours is mine." "Speaking of which," Grayson said, a mischievous glint in his eye, "I have a wedding present for you. I was going to wait, but I think now is the perfect time." He led her outside where Tommy was waiting with an envelope. "Don't blame me," Tommy said, handing it to Lucy. This was all his idea. Inside the envelope was a deed to the Harper family farm, with a mortgage marked "Paid in Full." Lucy's eyes filled with tears. "Grayson, you can't—" "I can and I did," Grayson said firmly. "And before you get upset, it's not a gift. It's an investment in our future. In the family we're going to build together." Lucy looked from the deed to Grayson's face, seeing nothing but love and sincerity there. "Our family," she repeated softly. "Our family," Grayson confirmed, "which may be growing sooner rather than later." His hand moved to rest gently on her stomach, and Lucy smiled, placing her hand over his. They hadn't told anyone yet about the baby. It was too early, the doctor had advised waiting until after the first trimester. But in that moment, with the bakery successfully launched and the farm secure, the future stretching bright before them, Lucy couldn't imagine keeping their joy a secret any longer. "Should we tell them?" she asked, glancing at Tommy, who was watching them curiously. "Tell us what?" Tommy demanded. Grayson looked to Lucy, leaving the decision to her. With a nod, she turned to her brother. "You're going to be an uncle," she said, simply. For real this time. Tommy's whoop of delight echoed down Main Street, drawing curious looks from passers-by. Uncle Pete, who had been waiting in the car, rolled down his window to ask what all the commotion was about. As Tommy rushed to share the news, Grayson pulled Lucy close, his hand still protectively covering her still flat stomach. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. Lucy looked around at the bakery with her name on it, at her brother and uncle celebrating on the sidewalk, And finally, at Grayson, the man who had walked into her life and changed everything. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she answered truthfully. Later that night, as they drove back to the farmhouse that was now truly theirs, Lucy thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a simple slice of cake at a farmer's market to a family and future built on trust, respect, and love. Life wasn't perfect. Uncle Pete's health would always be fragile. The bakery would have its challenges, and learning to blend their different worlds would take time and patience. But they would face it all together, one day at a time. As they pulled into the driveway of the farmhouse, now bathed in moonlight, Grayson turned to Lucy with a smile. "Home, sweet home," he said. Lucy smiled back, thinking of the bakery in town, the farm that had been her family's for generations, and the man beside her who had become her heart's home. "Yes," she agreed, her hand finding his. "Finally home." The end.